Bonjour.
That's really what we're doing. You know, everything about what I've been doing for the last 10 years has been about changing the status quo of cocktails from within. I'm not on the outside, I'm not on the periphery kind of going, I wish it was different. You know, I'm nuts deep in it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Birmingham food podcast that is Breaking Bread. I'm your host Liam. Just me today, no Carl for this intro. Don't worry, he's still on the episode. He's just not here for this intro today. With everything going on, we've been mad short on time. You know, our schedules have just gone crazy between October, November, December. Everything's gone mental. Loads of cool places still opening up. Loads of good things still happening in Brums. Going to keep this intro real short for everyone because this episode is incredible, an hour and a half long, and it's so in depth. I mean, Rob, if you've just ever met him or if you've ever been to 1881 Atelier, or I mean, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the first bar, but everything he does, just nothing he does is boring. Everything's unique, just completely thinks outside the box, just does his things his own way. Obviously, a lot of people know him from back in the old Edgbaston Boutique Hotel. Designed the menu there when he started working for that group with the Kenilworth Hotel and then Edgbaston Boutique Hotel. Just his drinks are phenomenal. I mean, you hear Carl raving about them all the time. He absolutely loves them. And his new venue, Atelier, it really is somewhere special. If you haven't been down there, it's up at Jewellery Quarter. I mean, it's stunning on the inside, stunning on the outside. Just somewhere you've really got to go and visit and witness for yourself, and the perfect setting for a mind like Rob's, really. We recorded this from Atelier, so obviously there is a little bit of background noise. There's a fridge that pops on and off sporadically through the episode. I tried to get rid of as much of that as possible, but it wasn't possible to get rid of all of that. But hopefully that doesn't distract you too much from the awesome stuff that Rob's got to say, because man, it's fascinating. As I said, this was about an hour and a half long, but I could have done an extra hour and a half. I could have went longer. I was so interested in everything he had to say. He's very passionate. He bangs the table. I mean, I'm going to have to try and get some kind of boom mics or something, because I've noticed now that these people that we're speaking to, they're so passionate about what they do. As they're talking, the hands are banging the table, and it does come through on the mic, and that's something I'm going to look at getting sorted. Obviously, if you love this episode, we're on a mission to tell as many people as possible how amazing Birmingham is. We're often overlooked, and I'm sick of it. So let's spread the positive Birmingham message far and wide. The way you can help us do that is by liking and subscribing on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, however you listen. If it's got a rating system, the algorithm pushes us up the more likes we get. That means we get heard by more people, maybe outside Birmingham, who might think, wow, I didn't realise Birmingham had all this awesome stuff. Let's get going there. So if you could support us that way, that would be amazing. Obviously, it doesn't cost a penny. Thank you everyone for all your support. The last few weeks we've had so much great feedback about the last few podcasts, and we've absolutely loved it. It makes it all kind of worthwhile for us. So ladies and gentlemen, Rob Wood. How you doing, Rob? You alright, mate?
I'm good. Yeah, really good.
Good to have you on. It's been a long time coming.
It's been a while, yeah. Sorry for the delays.
No, it's not. Well, we've got you at the best possible time, I think.
Yeah.
I think if we could have picked a time, it would have been this.
Yeah, this
so
is
it's worked out well.
Like now, we've got the opening out of the way and it's a bit more settled. It's
got your feet under the table here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the opening was a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, we were chatting to Rachel on that way down to Leeds last week, and we were just saying, like, how was it? And she was like, exhausting.
Yes.
She was like, it's exhausting.
Yeah. 2 years of nothing, and then literally everything happened in 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, from nothing literally to opening in 2 months after 2 years of waiting and planning. It was
crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot.
We'll get to that, and we'll obviously go right back into history like we always like to do. But I put a thing on Instagram about questions for you, and
I missed that.
I thought it'd be rude not to ask this one, seeing as it's from the legendary Tommy Matthews, you know, passing fancies. But he wants to know what your favourite sneaker was.
Ooh, that's on the spot. Well, actually, there's an AF1 paint splatter that I'm obsessed with getting a third pair of at the moment. It's like a really unique colorway. It's very like Jackson Pollock-esque. I've never seen anything like it, and I saw it and I was just immediately fell in love with it. And so that's, yeah, outside of like going back, like old school stuff, I'll probably say, yeah, like classic AF1s in like unique colorways I absolutely love. But yeah, this particular paint splatter one, if anybody has a 11 floating around, I'm looking for a pair.
How many pairs of trainers do you have then? Is it like
Currently,
a massive one? Yeah.
I would say it's probably around 40 at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah, I have like a...
I thought you were going to say 4. I was like, that's still a lot.
No, yeah. But it's not like I wouldn't... It's weird because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a collector. I wear them all. And I go through like phases of wearing one pair for ages, and then I'll see like a crack in the leather. I'll screw them back in the box. Try and get another pair immediately.
Do you have any that you just wouldn't wear or you haven't worn? Or
No. I have a pair of Momofuku high tops.
Nice.
That I know are, I'm never getting another pair of those. So I've maybe worn them less than 10 times. It was funny because David Chang actually put them on his TikTok in the last 48 hours. And Rory from Pause sent me the TikTok. And I was like, I own a pair of these. And he was like, no way, I didn't even know they existed. So I like went and grabbed it out of the box and like sent him a picture. He was like, ooh, sexy.
Are they Nike or something? Adidas?
Yeah, they're AF1 high tops, but they're in like a black denim. And
Yeah.
they've got the peach on the back heel. And then the Momofuku logo on the...
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I know nothing about trainers, like next to nothing.
No, I think there's going to be a lot of people scratching their heads now going, what the fuck?
Yeah, go ahead. Who's Dave Chang? Yeah, if anyone out there is wondering who Dave Chang is,
Where the hell have you been?
yeah, switch channel.
Yeah, you shouldn't. This is the wrong podcast if you don't even know who David Chang is.
Yeah.
You ain't got the Kanye West trainers then.
Honestly,
Not anymore.
You may have seen on my Twitter in the last few days, I literally hate that man more than money could. Like everybody who owns a pair of Yeezys, I have like screwed my face up at. And then I Instagrammed the other day, like someone said, oh, he'd been dropped by this person, this person, this person, this person, and this person had got rid of him, and no more sponsorship from this company or whatever. And I retweeted it saying, shouts vindication, Captain Holt style, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine vindication. I was like, this is it. Finally, he's got his just desserts.
Do you find that you get fanatical about a lot of things? Because you seem to be quite fanatical about, obviously, cocktails.
Yeah.
Drinks.
Yeah, I suppose. I do have like my interest sets, but I tend to grab something and I'll like take it as far as I think I can take it or until something stops me. When I was a kid, I was into Lego and it had like set upon set upon set, like chests and chests of Lego pieces, just building like random stuff. And then I'd kind of not really touched upon it for years and years and years and years. And then I actually don't know what it was that got me back into it. And all of a sudden I was like, damn. I saw a couple of Lego sets and I was like, oh, I need to buy that. Whatever it was. I don't remember what the first set was. And now I have like 60 like really high price sets.
Okay, it's like it's big money, some of them sets you see them.
Yeah.
You're like,
I mean, it's the classic example of the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. Like 100%. I found it really actually like meditative. When I'm building, I don't really like think about anything else, which is kind of unique proposition for me because I'm always working, like I do everything on my phone. And like I physically bump into people on the streets, like walk like into them because I've got my head in my phone at all times. Like it's just, I'm always doing something. When I'm Legoing, when I'm building, I totally zone out. It is like meditation. Like I don't think of anything else. It's just like that next piece, that next brick, that next placement, that next page. I find it amazing. And then as you're building, because of the way Lego build sets, there's always like little secrets like in the middle of things that only you know as the builder, because once you've covered it up, you never see those things. So yeah, like from paintball, airsoft to Lego and sneakers and like booze, spirits, and a few other kind of things. Yeah, I tend to like career down stuff, like head as far as I can, until something pulls me back, usually money. I'm like, oh, I've spent far too much money on this particular endeavor. Yeah, well,
you move these fucking
to be honest,
Kindra
is so supportive of the things that I like find myself like into, mostly because I think she sees the pleasure I get from whatever that is. You know, a few years ago, probably from her, like I remember when I left the Edgbaston Hotel, it was something that she said to me. She said, you know, you're not a tree, you don't have roots here. And I was in like a really not a great place in my life at the time, like wasn't being treated very well, and it was a bit of a dark time, but she made me realize that, and she's been that kind of like person that's pushed me and pulled me in and out of those kind of like good and bad places. And I think that when she sees that there's something that like I'm fixating on, whatever it is, because it's not my work, whatever it is, she's always very, very supportive of that. And I think because she wants to see me do something other than work, because I actually really love my job. You know, like we've kind of built ourselves a venue where we get to hang out with really nice people, serving nice drinks that we don't hate making. You know, those people enjoy being there, hopefully, and you know, everyone's in this like nice space. And when we close, everybody pays their bell and leaves, and we go home. Like happy days, right?
Happy days, yeah.
Yeah, and like so many people are just like constantly complaining about what they're doing. So get out, make a change, like do something, like be the positive force in your own life, you know.
But it's not the done thing, no.
It's not.
You're supposed to just go and get a job and be happy that you've got that job and moan about it. Be happy, but not secretly not be happy.
Yeah.
And then moan about it all the time. That's what you're supposed to do.
Apparently. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people who I couldn't possibly do a job I didn't enjoy. I just cannot do it. It's like physically against my ability to human. To not enjoy what I do, and if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, pretty obvious to everybody in the room that I'm not enjoying it. As Alex has realized, he says, you know, wearing my heart on my sleeve of both my personal and my work life. But I think it's really important, you know, to, you know, what is the goal if not happiness, right? Like money comes and goes, possessions also come and go, you know, things break. Happiness is the goal. It's got to be. It's got to be. Other people's, yours, you know, like it's why I do what I do. You know, it's not about making drinks. It's not about anything else. It's about if you're a little bit happier when you left than when you walked in the door, even just an iota, then we did our job. You know, that's it. All the fancy stuff that goes on this beautiful venue, all the glassware and the liquor and the process and the thought and the stories and all that kind of stuff, it comes down to nothing if you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. I've one of my most valuable lessons that I've probably taught myself this last 2 years is that like happiness isn't a destination. It fluctuates, like, and it's just
100%.
You know, what's happy now is might not be happy, and then instead of trying to judge yourself on, oh, am I happy? Maybe I might not be so happy today, but I could be tomorrow. It's not a destination. You get there and you go, fuck me, I'm a happy person.
Yeah.
And then the next day you don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
You realise that you have to work on it,
and it's a sliding scale, right? Like I'm as happy in a 3-star eating incredible food as I am sat on the sofa eating, you know, takeaway Chinese.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's be on the sofa eating takeaway. Yes. That's up there.
It's hard to beat, isn't it? Yeah. Really hard.
I would say you have like a unique way of looking at things and a unique way of doing things, and I feel like you're quite a creative person. Has anyone tried to manage that out of you in the past, or everybody?
Yeah.
How did you? Okay, a better question would be, how did you manage to kind of stick 2 fingers up and just do your own thing anyway?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to manage it out of me. I think a few people have tried to rein it in for sure, but I think, you know, if someone is a particular way, I think it's really important that supportive people around you, you know, if we're talking about work and jobs, that you nurture it, you know. And when I came back to the UK from my sojourn around the world, I kind of really wanted to sink my teeth into something. It took me 18 months to find what that thing was, I knew I didn't want it to be in Manchester anymore because I'd spent some time there and kind of didn't have great memories of the city, and I'd pissed a lot of people off, and so, you know, I didn't really want to be there. And when I found the Kenilworth Hotel, went there, met the guys, and within weeks they were like, so this is your hotel? And I was like, well, yeah, kind of, that's just always been part of my process. Like, I take ownership of a thing. Like, of course, it's not mine. You know, you own it. I just work for you. But it's always been that kind of way in my head where I've kind of taken it, and people would walk in and say, oh, you own the place. And I'd say, no, I just work here. But the way I walk and talk and, you know, whatever, it kind of like just comes across that way. And I think that's just always been just my process. And I think it really started, you know, like I, without being super cliche, like found myself, kind of realized how little I knew and how small, you know, we are as, you know, individuals in this big spinning blue thing we call Earth. As I was traveling, again, like super cliche, but I was like this cocky, arrogant, you know, bartender guy, young, thought a lot of himself, was careering towards, you know, wanting to win awards and be the best I could be. And when I hit this like big award, the thing I was like careering towards, I realized that it actually meant nothing. And like I didn't, you know, people weren't like stopping the street and hey, you know, I didn't become like a celebrity overnight or anything. It was like, oh yeah, actually means nothing. And of course, you know, the person in front of me on the other side of the bar doesn't give two monkeys either. And so it's, you know, you're only as good as your last drink. You're only as good as the last person you spoke to, kind of thing. I didn't realize that really until that point, and that's when, yeah, decided to kind of, well, run away. That's what it was. And as I kind of traveled around, realized how little I knew and how young I was, and again, how small I was in the universe, as it were. And that kind of was like a big hit home. And like I say, I came out to the UK, spent a long time looking for something to sink my teeth into, and that thing was the hotel. Ended up being there for almost 7 years, which is, you know, a long time, I guess, for a young person to be in a job. I don't hear of many people, you know, spending that amount of time.
So how old are we talking when you started the Kenilworth?
I was late 20s, and I'd already done a few years behind the bar. I've been blessed or cursed with a, not really sure what you call it. Some people call it eidetic memory. It's not photographic, but, you know, I have this thirst for knowledge, and it goes in, and I have the ability to recall. It's not anything special to me because it's always been there, but yeah, so I've, you know, came up with the Kenilworth, and the guys really nurtured me, you know, from like pretty much day one. They were like, well, let's kind of leave this guy alone to do what he does, you know, like hopefully making delicious drinks, you know, not running the place into the ground, you know, was trying to build a team around me, like, you know, of like our cocktail fairies, as we kind of referred to them at the time, like the team of waitresses and bartenders around us, and we kind of, you know, I think we did really good things there, and they nurtured a few other people before me. You know, they Chris Moore, who went on to do the Beaufort Bar, and then Coupette was the bartender who I took over from, so I had like a couple of weeks lap over from him. Before that, Richard Gillam, who ended up running like the entire F&B, I think, for a hotel chain out in Singapore, Malaysia, a few other countries. You know, they'd done great things, and again, obviously, then into the Edgbaston, the legacy that place left, and the people I've worked with have, you know, now run bars all over the country and all over the world, actually, and that's super something they should be super proud of. Yeah, but they certainly didn't try and manage that out of me, despite my ending at the Edgbaston being something I'm sure they're not massively proud of, and despite the place closing, I think they should be proud about how they, you know, nurtured not only me but lots of other people.
There's a lot of people have come through the Edgbaston.
Absolutely, yeah, a lot of people. And for a place that wasn't there for that long, actually, you know, like before the Edgbaston or the Kenilworth, we had some, you know, great guys who, like I said, managing places all over the country and all over the world. You know, as Tommy said a few weeks ago, you know, like having those sofas all over the world to sleep on, you know, it's not a terrible thing to have. But, you know, that sense of community that he also mentioned, you know, that comes from that camaraderie behind the bar. You know, people ask me every day, like, where's your accent from? Apparently I have a weird accent. And I always say, well, I think it's because I haven't really ever worked in a place or in a position where there's been one accent. You know, I worked at a hotel in Manchester where I think we had like the whole of the EU, like 46 staff, and it's like 44 nationalities. Yeah. Like that's gonna leave a mark, right? But no, I've always had very supportive people around me from like the early days. Back in Manchester with Jamie Stevenson and Bo Myers and Ian Morgan. Then through into my time here in the Midlands. And then again, you know, once I left the hotel, working with Ammon at Fort St Paul's, opening that place was, again, kind of eye-opening. It was the first time really from scratch seeing a place opened, you know, on very little money, you know, very little resource. But that was like a super eye-opening experience. And he was really transparent about the whole process, which was part of my kind of, my want to do it and part of like our agreement to work together that way, that he was like, you know, I'm going to show you what I've done so far and let's do everything, you know, ahead together. And then obviously left there and did my own places. And here we are. So no, I don't think anyone's ever really tried to pull that out of me. I don't think they would have gotten very far if they had tried.
No.
It's very lucky though, because I mean, I think the type of venues you've worked at, I mean, we didn't touch on what you did before you went travelling and who you worked for, but I feel like when you work for a bigger chain, you tend to get put into their system and they want you to work like they work.
I've literally never worked for a chain, ever.
Yeah.
I worked for Scottish Newcastle as my first bar in the UK, which were, you know, they are a big brewery company, but I worked in a space for like 8 or 9 months, I think. Maybe it was a year. But for a couple who had worked in like kind of indie restaurants and bars, pubs, really, because like style bars and wine bars were the thing back then. God, I'm so old. So really it was working for them rather than it was working for the brewery. It happened to be that the brewery was there, but they had opened this new space in Manchester that was very, you know, style driven and very like the new bar. It was where everybody wanted to be seen and see other people. It was this big triangular glass building, and the menu was very kind of like cutting edge, I guess, at the time, which was, you know, laughable now, but still cool then. And then, you know, because of this brain that I have, just constantly bounced around Manchester, like looking for the next biggest back bar that I could consume and the next menu for me to consume, and, you know, the next kind of like mentor figure to drain of information to then, you know, kind of like move on to the next. And I always had like always felt like I had a legitimate reason to move on from a place. Like I've almost like completed this.
What year are we talking then? Hate to put an age on you here, Rob.
I know. That must have been 04.
So cocktails, you know, like it's hard today when
something like that.
Cocktail bars are cool, and there's awesome bars like this one, especially around London. There's loads of them. But 04, there wasn't even like Alchemist or Botanist or cocktails were like super.
The living room
sweet,
was the
things.
place.
Yeah,
the living room was like the place. Tim Bacon set up the living room with a couple of guys who were like TGIs and stuff. They were the cutting edge.
Yeah, TGIs probably was the cocktail place for cocktails you went in 2004. It was TGIs.
So it must have been much harder to get the information you're after.
Yeah, no
compared
internet.
to how it is now. Anyway,
no internet. Yeah.
I remember, so Class Magazine was really the only source of information. Class Magazine, Theme Magazine, there was a magazine called Flavour now. Theme and Flavour don't exist anymore. Drinks International was around at the time, but was more like head officey kind of information. But Class was the only thing at the time. And I remember getting them and really like drinking in every tiny bit of information I could find. Like really going over them multiple times, seeing if I could like glean every tiny little bit of information. And I kept those copies for years and years and years to go back. And I still do that now. I still keep copies of magazines to kind of, you know, go back and refresh myself, because if someone had a good idea, it was a good idea no matter what, right? Like good ideas don't go out of style. And so I often go back, I guess, years and years back to old issues of things and reread them to kind of like pick up on things, because as much as it's nice having all this information crammed in my head, it gets jumbled up sometimes.
Yeah.
But it was really difficult to find. That's why I said, you know, I bounced around, because I was always looking for the next back bar, the next mentor, the next menu, because you weren't able to go online like you can now. And, you know, I wouldn't want to be a kid now coming into this industry. You know, you're expected to have to know the freezing point of alcohol from liquid nitrogen and know how to work a centrifuge and a rotary evaporator before you even balance a daiquiri. Like, it's insane, the stuff that the kids are get thrown at now.
Does that make better bartenders or worse?
100% worse. Yeah, definitely. Again, my opinion, but yeah. The kids coming into bartending now, there's no foundation level. You know, they're thrown into the, you know, you get a job in a bar, and within 3 to 6 months, there'll be something, you know, espumas and foams and freezing this and flavored ices and crystal clear this and
fucking washing
milk
up liquid in
punches
them and fucking smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Smoke clashes over the top of the drink.
Yeah, you know, when I started, it was crushed ice was like a cool thing, and now, you know, we don't even use ice.
Most chefs we've had on the podcast have said exactly the same thing. Like, you know, young chefs come out and they want packagettes, they want all this fancy gear, they want foams, they want all of this. But then you ask them to make a hollandaise sauce and they're struggling, you know, or you ask them to shell oysters and scallops and they're struggling. They can't do the fundamentals.
Stops and sauces. Yeah. And, you know, it's so funny because we've kind of gone back that way. Like, you know, as a bartender, we're more culinary led than we are like drinks led, really. Yeah. Because everything we do is mise en place.
Yeah.
So the way we differentiate what we do to what most other people do is pre-mixing, pre-batching. We're adding dilution, and it gives us the ability to add other flavors, new textures, new sensations, aromatics that you wouldn't ordinarily find, because we are able to finish it completely. Whereas if you're pre-mixing all your ingredients to then pour, you know, 90 to 100 mils into a jigger to then stir it or shake it, you're still adding that finishing touch at the end. And removing shaking and stirring from our repertoire has kind of like given us another set of tools to play with. And we talk about stocks a lot because we never just add water to a drink to dilute it, but ice is always just water. And so we find that like most interesting. But again, you know, I wouldn't recommend, you know, a noob coming into the industry to come into what we do and start trying to understand it, because it's
too much.
I mean, personally, I would say yes. You know, I would say go and work in a TGI Fridays, you know, for a year. You know, well, first of all, go and wash up for a year.
That's what I was going to say. What do you look for if you're hiring a member of staff then? Do you expect them to be able to just do the classics and then you can teach them stuff from there, or...?
I'll be honest, for us, we're not really looking for a skill set. We're looking for a personality, because I can teach you how to make drinks, but I can't make you be a nice person. You can be the best drinks maker in the world and have all the knowledge and, you know how to make a casino from 1928. But if you're an asshole, it's for naught, right?
Yeah. So you're just after someone you can teach, basically. That's nice.
We prefer clean skins every day of the week. You know, we've got a 19-year-old running our entire drinks program at the Wilderness. Wow. She's worked with me for a year, fresh out of UCB. Had only ever worked in restaurants, and she's switched on. She listens. She, you know, understands the bit she needs to understand and is able to explain to guests why and what we do. But she runs our entire drinks program. Now, yes, it's built by me, but she still executes it day to day and runs it day to day. And I'm not sure if that would be the case having little to no experience otherwise.
Yeah, because there's some attitude of, well, I know how to make this and I know this. Maybe
and someone walking in saying, well, can I have a last word?
Yeah.
And they're like, I have no idea what that is. Whereas, you know, we operate our drinks programs like food menus.
Do you think a lot of that's down to your process and how you do your drinks, with some of them, well, most of them being pre-batched?
Yes.
That you couldn't come in with the knowledge of it anyway, because it's what you do is completely different.
Yeah, I mean, we're standing on the shoulder of giants, so we are not pioneering per se. Sure, some of the things we do, we've developed ourselves, but we weren't the first to do this, and I'm sure we won't be the last. But we're certainly kind of carving our own path with it. But absolutely, you know, if you've got, 3 months of experience under your belt, you're not running a drinks program, you know. And yes, if someone walks in and asks for an obscure 1920s classic, you can just say, oh, let me just check out the ingredients, walk in the back and Google it. You know, read the recipe. You know, Google is fantastic. Do I have all those ingredients? Yes, I do. Great. You walk out. Yeah, I've got everything. Let me make it for you. Even if you've never made it before, that's fine. But the way we want to do things is, more like a restaurant. We have a menu. You order from that menu. The example I often kind of help to justify to people is, the Wilderness is a restaurant. We have potatoes and a fryer. We have fish, eggs, sparkling water, and flour. But you can't order fish and chips.
Yeah.
And people are so used to walking into bars and just ordering whatever they want, whether it's a mojito or a margarita or a porn star martini, but there's no specialization. There is such a deficit of skill in our industry because operators open bars without any knowledge or any blind sense of who's going to work there. We get operators calling me on a monthly basis, and really the first question I ask them is, have you got a head chef? Have you got a bartender or a bar manager? Have you got like a team in place? And they'll say, we'll recruit a couple of weeks out. And I'm saying, I don't mean to be that guy, but I'm out, because that's what happens. You're going to spend £100,000 on opening a bar or a restaurant, and yet the last thing you do is recruit the people who are going to be there. And then you're trying to like indoctrinate them in your way of thinking, like, they should be there months out. And I understand that's money, and that's not going to happen. But that's, for me, the problem with the way bars and restaurants are open nowadays. And won't be a populist view, but quite frankly, I don't care. When we opened 40 St. Paul's, Emma and I worked together for 3 months before we opened, because so that our viewpoints aligned and we were the people who were going to be there. And so we brought every part of it together. And of course, you have that sense of venues that are, 40 or 50 people. And of course, that's, you're not going to hire them all and hold them for a month doing trainings and tastings and making sure they've got everything they need before they open, because that's not feasible. My question would be, do we need those places? Do we really need, like 100 places that sit 400 covers? Probably not. Manchester has like 100 independent bars and restaurants, and they're all like 30 covers and under. And Birmingham is the city of ginormous venues, and we have like maybe 5 or 10 good bars. We also have 5 or 10 venues that sit 500 people on a Saturday night. Like, do you really think there's going to be a level of quality there? I'm not entirely sure.
No, I see. I'm surprised by the amount. I think you go to Manchester, there is a lot, isn't there?
Yeah. I love Birmingham and I love our independent scene. But when people say we have an incredible food and drink scene, it's only if you compare ourselves to ourselves. If you compare the independent scene to Manchester or Leeds or Bristol or Glasgow or even places like Brighton, just do the numbers. You really be surprised. And we do have a really great indie scene, but it's still up and coming, and for every one that opens, one closes. Yeah. And partly that's the lack of support that we get. You were talking to Joe, I've known Joe for a few years, and he says, there are ways to support indies that don't cost a penny. And that's absolutely true. And there are ways to support that does cost you money, but every penny you put into an indie, it's going into someone's pocket. That the social post of every time you spend £1 at an indie, someone does a dance. That's real. I can tell you, having owned or been part of 15 independent venues, I can tell you every single booking, every single penny spent genuinely makes a difference. And yet, the amount of people I'll go to Pizza Express and Franco Manca and stuff like that.
Fucking Weatherspoons.
Yeah, well, and Weatherspoons is, just that kind of viewpoint of people not giving a shit, really, because through COVID, everybody heard and saw what Tim did to all of the teams at Weatherspoons. And the day lockdown lifted, every Weatherspoons was packed. Not the local pub, but every Weatherspoons was packed to the rafters.
Yeah, there's one over the road from us.
Yeah.
And as soon as it opened, they were queuing down the road to get in.
It's crazy.
Bonkers. The only time I ever spend money in Weatherspoons is if I'm at the airport.
Yeah.
Because you literally have no choice.
Where else are you going to get a pint at 6 a.m?
Exactly, yeah.
But support independence. So if someone comes here, they support you. Your day off, you go and support other independents.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, trickle down comics.
Tim Martin's not supporting anywhere.
No, absolutely not, yeah.
Supporting the Bahamas.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It makes sense. And obviously as well, just on a point of view that it makes a better high street, instead of like 10 of the same, you've got like individual cool shit, man. Like like Sturchy at the minute, it's
absolutely
full of cool shit.
Yeah,
it's not just chain after chain. Oh look, there's a Costas that looks like exactly like the other Costas up the road.
Yeah,
and the other Costas that's in town. Not picking on Costas, like, but you know what I mean. It's the first one that came to my head.
It's fine.
It's the first one that came to my head. just going back a little bit, the changeover in staff in them big venues is so vast. Like, I mean, who stays there longer than like a year, really?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it comes down to the base of should you have opened a place that needs 40 staff, knowing full well that the transitory nature of hospitality staff. Yeah.
But then also, I think it looks at a bit the fact that people still look down upon the career of bartending or hospitality.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Do you have any idea on how we could change that? Or
I'm not sure if I have the answers per se. I think people should only do it if they want to do it. You know, a lot of people go into hospitality because they can. You look into Europe, look into the States, you know, there are professional bodies that look after hospitality staff because it's a real career.
Yeah, we couldn't just wander over to America and just jump on a bar.
No. Yeah. You just come out of uni, you need a poor card. And that's the same in a lot of European countries as well. But, you know, there are also lots of hotelier schools and hospitality schools in Europe, and we don't really have that here. We have a couple of them like popping up in the last maybe 10 years, but, you know, 10 years in, you know, the last couple of hundred. Yeah. It's really not what it should be. But because if anyone's, you know, even like down on their luck, they can just walk into a pub, into a restaurant and say, you know, I'm willing to wash dishes or, you know, collect glasses or empty the bins, whatever it will be. You know, it's a great industry for that. You can find a place for yourself very easily. And I've seen people who are hardworking, who are dedicated and diligent, go from literally collecting glasses to a general manager in under 5 years. It can be done.
Yeah.
But you have to put the work in. And as we're also very aware, it's very hard. And I don't blame parents for not wanting this for their kids, but there has to be a change at some point, and it's one of the things we're trying to kind of make a difference with is the sense that the chefs nowadays are trying to go to like 4 days, 3 days, you know, trying to have a work-life balance. That's really important, but that's not my world. But I've been making drinks now for coming up to 20 years, and my body is a mess. My shoulders, my elbows, you know, my hands. Had a trip to A&E a couple of weeks ago. It was a bit of a shocker, like am I having a stroke or something kind of job? And, you know, like, again, just before we start, you know, my head starts spinning. I'm like, what is going on? And those things...
Stress or...
Yeah, who knows? But, you know, everything that I've done for 20 years is pretty much designed to ruin my body. Really, really good friends with one of the best chiropractors in the country. They deal with all the Olympic athletes, all the talent from WWE when they come to the country. They work with like some of the best and brightest people in the whole of the UK and actually around Europe as well. And the conversations we've had, you know, like just little things like every time a drink is made, ice comes out of an ice well. And those are cubes of ice that are solid, pretty much solid, and they're poured into a box of metal that is also square or rectangular. And then you take a square-edged ice scoop. If you're lucky, it's a round-edged ice scoop. And you're literally ramming your arm into a box of cubes to then scoop ice, you know, to like chest height, from waist height, into a glass, into a shaker, whatever it may be. And that action alone, you know, if not hundreds of thousands, millions of times, it takes a toll. You know, you're reaching for things by your ankles. You're reaching for things way above your head. You're carrying barrels and massive trugs of ice and boxes of beer and liquor and, you know, glasses and everything else. And you're doing thousands and thousands of steps a day whilst doing all of those things. And it really takes a toll.
Definitely.
And you're doing, you know, 80-hour weeks and those kind of like, that badge of honor. Oh, I did like 90 hours this week. You know, that needs to get in the sea.
Yeah, if you've done 45 hours, you're a part-timer.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
What a horrific way of looking at things.
You know, like we get referred to as a senior team at the Wilderness now, and when Al literally limited our hours to 46, and I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my week? You know, I'm like, I have like evenings at home. Yikes. Yeah. It's like, is this being an adult? You know, like, have I finally grown up and I'm not working every night, you know?
And then the late nights, the sleep patterns, I mean, there's loads of research coming out now about how bad it is when your sleep's affected, or if you don't get enough sleep, or if you work nights. People who do night shifts are like, well, I can't remember what the stats were. Like,
takes years off your life.
Yeah.
We had it at work because I used to do nights on the railway, and we'd have studies, and they'd come in and say they had to stop you doing it, like, because it was in time between days and nights.
Yeah.
Eventually, they were like, we want you to just do the nights or just do the days, because it's, you know, it's taking years off your life.
Yeah. I remember doing like back-to-back shifts, you know, finishing at 2 a.m, and then being in at 10 the next morning.
oh yeah, I remember.
You know, you've got to get home, sleep, wake up, have breakfast, get back to work in that, you know, few short hours.
That's mad.
Yeah, it's nuts. But, you know, we are trying to do a little bit to change that. You know, Amy, the girl who runs our drinks program at the Wilderness, as I said, she's 19, she runs our entire drinks program. Her first, like, cocktail bar job. Obviously, we're not a cocktail bar, we're a restaurant, but we have a cocktail program that's pretty expansive, and she still finds shaking fun. She's probably shaken less than 100 cocktails in her life. You know, like we have one shaken drink, or we had one shaken drink on the menu because it really needed to be shaken. But she still really enjoys it. Oh, she was like, that drink would come on, or like a check would come on, and she'd be like, oh yes, I get to shake something. You know, and if she can get to my age and stay in this industry and not have her body ruined because we don't have an ice machine at the Wilderness, we don't have shaken and stirred drinks, all those things of like her lugging around case and case of beer and barrels and all that kind of stuff. She doesn't do any of that. Those things aren't thought about. Things like ice wells. When I point this out to people, they're like, "Oh, crazy."
I don't know if you noticed how much I was smiling when you were describing that, because I remember like vividly, like, and I worked in a cocktail bar, and it was like, no, the sliding fridge things, and then you have to reach down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So your head was nearly inside the ice thing, grabbing out the ice. And it's harder than you think. By the end of a shift, your arm was so tired from like digging out the ice.
And honestly, when you've got those kind of like those ice wells that are really deep, and then you've got a bar that is quite deep, and then you've got a double speed rail on front of the ice well, and you literally spend your entire evening at like from the waist at about 45 degrees.
Yeah, because I'm short as well.
Pivoted.
You can't see how short I am. I'm like 5'8", 5'9". So I was
Yeah.
literally on my tiptoes, reaching across all the time.
Yeah.
Is this why you've got rid of ice? No ice here.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we the first instance of that was at 40 St Paul's. We built the ice well into the bar top. So we wanted our fridges not so people could walk in and look in the fridge and say, I want, you know, a bottle of Corona, because we didn't sell that. But that was like one of those first things that we want to take that away from you, because it's the first thing people do. They walk into a bar and they look behind the bar, and then all you see is glassware. So the fridge was to us, because then I don't have to turn around and crouch down. I can just tilt the door back and pick something out. So that's better for me. Again, like, it's all very good having the fridges face the customer, the guest, so they can place their order. But if that's not best for me, I'm the one who's here 10 hours a day. Customers here maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour. And every time I speak to an operator or someone about kind of how and why bars do what they do, I don't understand why bartenders aren't spoken to about designing bars.
Yeah.
For example, Tommy and I had 0 conversations around the design of our bars. And yet there are pretty strong similarities, despite the fact that we did not discuss anything about what we were doing.
No, it's very similar when you actually look at it.
And when you look at all of the bars that are designed by bartenders, you now see the changes that should have been made, you know, all those years ago, when bar designers were designing bars terribly. And arguably, you know, it's one of those things where someone finds a way that something works and they go, let's just leave it like that. And no one ever questions it. And, you know, Kindred calls me the why guy, because every single thing we do has to come with a why. If there is no why, then we do not do it.
Oh, I think I said to you before about Simon Sinek when I was here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly,
why,
yeah.
But the Honda as well, and the 7 whys.
Yeah, the golden circle is so important. If, you know, more people took on board people like Simon Sinek's words, there would be more people doing less in the box stuff. And when we point out to people who are, you know, talking to us in the space, you know, we point out we don't have a back bar, we don't have ice wells, we don't have speed rails, we don't have an ice machine, we don't shake, we don't stir, no one's gonna elbow you in the back trying to get your seat, there's no liquor written on the menu. Then people start noticing all those things, like, oh, like, yikes, because they walk in, they see, you know, this beautiful space we have now. And they're not focusing on those things, which is brilliant, because you shouldn't notice any of those things. You should just sit down, be comfortable, get taken care of, order a drink, not to realize we've taken something away that you thought was imperative that really isn't.
It's too much of, why is that like that? Oh, because it's always been like that.
Exactly.
Is there anything more infuriating than that answer?
100%. Yeah.
It's always been like that.
These old bars, they were designed for pulling pints and putting
Yeah.
them straight to someone. There you go, there's your pint. That's not taking into account cocktails and this and that and all the other stuff that's gone on.
They're like the steps, the spirit steps at the back bar spirit steps, and they were too high for some people to reach, and they were like, "Can you reach that for?" It's like, how unpractical.
Just make sure you do the rota so there's someone tall on. I remember having those conversations.
It's mental though,
Yeah,
now when you
it
think
is.
about it, but it sounds obvious now you talk about it. You're
But
like,
you
oh,
know-
yeah.
This is one of the things that I found really interesting. That's not interesting at all, but I have a weird brain. I wanted to know why that was. And so I went back as far as I could to try and find the reason as to why those things existed. And of all the reasons cocktail bars being the way they are now, you would not expect the answer to be, wait for it, Adolf Hitler. Which, you know, that the whole internet thing, if you comment 50 times, eventually someone will mention Hitler. But World War II is actually the real reason. You know, so many people were drafted, and if you were an unskilled worker, you got drafted, and a lot of those people didn't come home. And those people were cellarmen and hotel bartenders. And if you even if you worked at a brewery or a distillery, you know, the war effort took precedent. And so those places were, you know, like stills were broken down to use for ammunition. And, breweries and distilleries were all, you know, taken apart. Anything was made of metal was pulled apart and made into bullets and ammunition. And the people who fired those guns, you know, a lot of them didn't come home. You know, people forget that rationing went into the 60s. And that's not a long time ago. My mum was born in 1960. So she doesn't remember rationing because she was like 3 or 4 years old when it finished. But my nan remembers it, and she's still alive. And when I speak to her about like pubs and bars, she's seen, you know, the style bars and, you know, coming out of the war, you know, because we were the front line. And so everything was affected. You know, kids were sent off to the countryside and all that kind of stuff. People were drafted into the war. And if those people don't come home, then what happens after the war? You know, you come to the 60s, because of course the war didn't end in the 60s, but the effects of the war didn't really wear off until the early 60s. And so, yes, you've got like barmaids tending bar where, you know, it probably would have been men earlier on. And the youngsters and the people that then took those jobs didn't have the old timer to say, that's not how a martini is made. A martini shouldn't be blue or green or have that sugar in it, right? And then all of a sudden you go through this period of like everything being boiled and food being really drab and being, you know, rationed, things like sugar. And then all of a sudden someone comes along with like blue curacao and Midori, and like things are like taste like pineapple juice, and you're like, holy shit, like this is awesome. This thing's got a banana in it. I haven't seen a banana ever. Like my nan told me the story when she was a kid. She didn't know bananas. They didn't exist. You know, that's crazy. Like nowadays you think about that, like a banana is the thing that you eat every day, right? Like it's so pervasive. And my mum doesn't remember seeing bananas until she was like 15 or 16. That's crazy. That's like mid 70s.
Yeah.
That I thought that was really interesting, that those old timers, they weren't there to say no. And you know, you might have the 1 or 2 old timers in the really expensive hotel bars who maybe didn't get drafted, or, you know, like spent 20 years going through. But even like even the American bar at the Savoy serve blue drinks, you know, when they probably shouldn't have. You know, I know people love blue drinks, but sweet, sugar, exotic fruits, you know, things being multicolored and disco, there was very little to fight against that. And so it was pervasive. And then you come out of that and, you know, you have the yuppie era of the 80s and everybody wants the biggest, the best, you know, spend all this money and you have another crash, you know, and over it goes. When I kind of realized that, like, whoa, that's kind of crazy that we still have the bar designs now that we have from, you know, the early 70s or the late 60s, because there was no one pushing the boundaries. Because those people, it was almost like we had a reset, and arguably probably everything did.
Yeah.
But for me, that's the reason we are in the place we are now. And, you know, that's a huge amount of time ago. And still only now these things are happening. And of course, there have been people who have been doing things along this message for a while. You know, I'm not saying I'm a pioneer. There are people who've been doing this, you know, long before I. But I thought it was really interesting that I, you know, kind of set out on this journey to find out why is this the case. And when I kind of hit that point, I was like, yikes. You know, like going through 2 world wars, that's going to decimate, you know, the working class. And the working class are the people who worked in the pubs and the bars. And, you know, as bars became not pubs and became wine bars and style bars, they became new, and the design just stayed the same.
It's crazy. In an old interview, you said that bartending was the best job in the world. And after everything we just spoke, do you still believe that to be true?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I would still say that, yeah. Every single day is different, no matter what. Every single day, something new will present itself as a new challenge, or, you know, if that's something breaking or something going right, something going wrong, you know, different people walking through the door. It's always different. And I think that's amazing. I think it's probably why I've done it for as long as I have. You know, I've never really faltered. A couple of times I've had wobbles where I've gone, you know, I think this is it, I'm done. But I've stuck at it because I can't think of another thing that would give me the variety on a daily basis. You get to speak to people and be creative. You've got that creative output if you're that kind of person. You know, I think those people do find ways to be that person, I guess. But no, I would stick by that. I would say it's still probably the best job in the world. Not the best paid job in the world. Pretty rough hours and all that kind of stuff. But personally, I think it's still the best job in the world.
Still the best job.
I mean, I've traveled the world for free. You know, I have friends all over the world. Well, acquaintances. I hope I call them friends all over the world. I can do the thing I do anywhere, regardless of language or location, and I have. And that's pretty cool. You know, there are not many things that you can do anywhere.
No.
There are a few, but there's not many.
No.
And even down to like legislation, it's only a case of like a quick recap. Like when I worked in Scandinavia, and they were like, oh, you can't put more than 4 cls of alcohol in a drink. And I'm like, what? Okay. Well, this is different. You know.
Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, because they have monopolies on alcohol. They're very strict about what you can and can't do. And yeah, in Sweden, you can't put more than 40 mLs, 4 cls of alcohol in any way into a drink. So whether that's like 25 mils of liquor and then, you know, your liqueurs and your bitters and stuff. Yeah. It all has to be put into that little category. Whereas in the UK, if you don't put 40 mLs in a drink, it's
going to be no one in your bar.
Well, you're probably not going to be very popular, yeah. So that, you know, but that's just a, you know, you have to learn those little rules and off you go. You know, whether it's fluid ounces or mLs or CLs or, you know, what's the local hooch and what do people drink, you know, that kind of thing.
I bet it's a good way of getting to know like different cultures and stuff though, isn't it? Like,
massively. I mean, one of the things I found so fascinating about this job is the fact that it gives me no end of inspiration. Our new exhibition here, so we're finishing our current exhibition, Terroir, in 2 weeks. So this one will run until the 12th. Next one starts on the 17th. It's called Winter Solstice, and it's a celebration of flavours and winter traditions from cultures all over the world. And so, you know, I spend weeks looking at what other people do in winter and then finding flavours and how to manifest those things and how to present them to guests and stuff. Super interesting.
When you say what other people do you mean like drinks-wise, food-wise, or just...
Everything.
Yeah. This
time of year, we focus on Christmas, but a lot of the world do celebrate Christmas, but a lot of the world don't celebrate Christmas. So, you know, we've kind of said to ourselves, this is not a Christmas menu. Our menu is not a Christmas menu. You know, we've done cool stuff like we've taken this building and turned it into a Christmas card.
It's stunning.
Because we are in the UK. Yeah. You see it today.
Yes,
I
it's
put a little sneak peek out. And we've the archway behind you there. There isn't a fire in it, but we've done another one where it's me sat on a chair with a fire in this archway and a wreath. And like, you know, it's the idea of, you know, it's one of these chairs. So it's like all the little like touches from the space. So like those elements are Christmas, and of course for those parts of the world that do celebrate Christmas, we kind of touch upon that, you know, even if, you know, they don't do the things that we do, we touch on some of that. But, you know, some cultures around the world, they don't have a concept of Christmas, and they don't have any, you know, celebrations like we do. They don't mark the 25th of December or the 31st of December or anything like that. And so, you know, for us, it was not necessarily a sense of inclusivity, but kind of, you know, let's show what everybody does. Not everybody, but, you know, let's throw the doors open and see what else is out there, because, you know, it can be pretty monotonous if you're just working with spices and the same fruits, you know, year in.
Yeah, here's a mince pie cocktail.
Yeah, exactly.
Some more wine.
Yes, exactly.
You haven't got these two things on, have you?
No.
We might float with those two other things, but certainly not in the way I think you might.
Oh, I'd imagine if you have, it's some crazy concoction of just deliciousness.
Maybe.
Is it Japan or Korea where they have
Japan, they have KFC every Christmas Day,
yeah, I love
Watch
that.
this space for that one.
Bonehead. You and Bonehead. Yes.
Yeah, we have
That's cool,
we have something coming that's pretty cool for that particular tradition. We have a drink on the menu called Kentucky for Christmas, which is the slogan for KFC in Japan. So we're taking 2 different Japanese whiskies. We're fat washing one with chicken schmaltz, so rendered chicken fat, and one with replica KFC spices, and then we're basically serving it as an old-fashioned and the glass is kind of like this shaped, and so we've got a sticker going on the glass so it looks like you're drinking out of a miniature KFC bucket, and then we've got like a savory stock that kind of dilutes it, and it's as close to having KFC in a liquid form as you'll probably ever get. I was somewhat bothered by a post I saw recently where there's another bar in Birmingham who have also done something with KFC Japan and Christmas, but luckily they're just serving actual KFC with drinks. When I saw the post, I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe someone else has done this. Like within a couple of weeks of us wanting to announce it, because we were going to announce it like within a couple of days, and they put it out, and I was like, damn it. But no, it doesn't affect what we're going to do. Yes, they have Christmas in Japan, but they certainly don't celebrate it the way we do.
Yeah.
China, Mexico, Brazil, the Middle East. Like these are all things that we're kind of exploring, but they're not the way you might think, because you know, if you don't have the idea of snow and a Santa and that kind of stuff, like, doesn't mean that, you know, that's why we've called the exhibition Winter Solstice, because it's not a Christmas menu. It is a celebration of winter, and people throughout time and all over the globe have observed the Earth tilting on its axis, days getting shorter, nights getting longer, you know, and from like the Mayan calendar through to now, that has been celebrated in some form, you know, not with a Coca-Cola red suit with fur trim, but in some other way. And so we're exploring those facets rather than the traditional ones, with some traditional stuff, you know, kind of thrown in for the people who want to.
Oh man, I've got to come back. I've got to have that chicken drink now.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
I've got to touch on 1881 because it's kind of how I got to know you anyway, and
it's the first
Carl
place.
probably got to know you.
I think I remember coming to the Edgbaston when it first opened, so I must have crossed paths with you there. But 1881, I always wanted to go to the place before 1881. I can never say the name of it.
Small Stella,
That stood out. That was the first time I'd seen a cocktail taster menu, and I was like, "That's mad! I've never heard of that."
Yeah, well, cocktail tasting menus are not a thing, really. When we opened Small Stella, again, we're standing on the shoulder of giants. We were one of only 2 bars in the entire world that offered cocktail tasting menus as sole offering. So it was just us and a place called Bar Genyomoto in the Roppongi Hills in Tokyo, but was a very different offering. But actually, we'd taken a lot of inspiration from them, but also kind of like done it our own way. But arguably the progenitor of it all is a gentleman called Luke Wearty. He owns a bar in Melbourne now called Birdie, but he was working at a place called De Rome in Melbourne that I visited in 2008. And it was easily the most progressive bar in the world at the time, I would say, along with probably Taylor in New York. And he was working with or for this guy called Matt Bax, who was more of like an artist than he was a bartender, but happened to make drinks. And what they were doing was absolutely insane. They were really pushing every boundary that there was. And it was the first time I'd ever come across the idea of cocktails in a multi-course format. And I was like blown away by it. I didn't have it, but I was so enthralled with this idea. Between then and now, you know, the way I kind of justify it, if you will, is I've seen people order a cheese board and then have a bread and Alexander alongside of it, and then be like, oh, I might have a glass of champagne before I go home. And I'm like, when you wake up in the morning with a belly full of junk, you're going to blame me? But I had no say over what you ordered. I just did what you asked me to do. And so the idea of curating people's experience and the fact that a cocktail menu is very rarely separated into like sweet drinks, sour drinks, dry drinks, you know, full body drinks, savory drinks, whatever. Not never, just rarely. Kind of like puzzled me. And then of course, you know, food pretty much forever has been put into courses, whether or not a multi-course format, but like starters, mains, and desserts, whether it's, you know, pesci cani, primi secondi, whatever, or any other language's version of it, that there's always that sense of, you know, it goes first, it goes second, it goes last, or whatnot. And yeah, if you go to a restaurant and you try and order cheesecake followed by soup, and then you finish with a steak, they'll fight you on it. But, you know, built on that premise of, you know, the customer's always right, which is, you know, nonsense, they'll eventually give in, because everyone always does. Personally, I think the word no is very powerful, but that sense of being able to curate people's experience was something that then I'd kind of like immediately wanted to fall into. And when everyone else was doing, you know, molecular mixology, you know, the drinks version of molecular gastronomy, albeit playing with it a few years later, I was so hell-bent on this idea of curating your experience. And when I was at the Kenilworth Hotel, we played with it, but it was you know, too early, too ahead of its time, whatever. But you know, we were coming out of recession at the time, and the last thing people wanted to do was, you know, spend £30 up front for 4 cocktails, despite that being an absolute bargain. You know, the idea of almost like ordering something for £30 was definitely not going to sway when you could order a, you know, £7.50 cocktail, whatever. And then so as soon as I could do it, I did it. And then when we were at the Edgbaston, I then got to play with food in terms that Ryan had come in and he'd built a tasting menu because he was a young up-and-coming chef and he really wanted to do a tasting menu. And so we did the pairings alongside it, and that was really my kind of like first instance, I suppose, to like pairing drinks to food. And then the very first time I ever did it was at 40 St Paul's. We did a Valentine's event where it was the journey of the Orient Express. And I hassled that man for weeks and weeks, and he was like, it'll never work. And I was like, just trust me on this. And we sold out like 3 days. It was awesome. And the idea was we did, you know, 2 or 3 drinks that were available to represent London, Paris, Innsbruck, and Venice. With a journey I was lucky enough to go on the Orient Express a few years ago. And people loved it. It was awesome. It was everything I wanted it to be. And I was made like, right, okay, that's it. And then I started to go down this road, and I was trying to convince him that I wanted to open 40 St Paul's on like a Monday or a Sunday and like host people in this kind of like tasting menu way, but he was having none of it. And then eventually I left and I opened Smultron Tower. And so, you know, we opened and we were like, well, if we're going to do this, we have to not really give people a choice. And so we did this kind of really, probably looking back, crazy thing where, you know, we took over this 4x4 meter room underneath, you know, a bar that isn't known for cocktails. It's in fact, you know, a beer bar. And
sorry, where was it?
Underneath Tilt.
Tilt. Oh.
Yeah, it was underneath Tilt. So yeah, not the kind of place you would head for anything other than beer and pinball, or great coffee. And we built this space that was laid out a little bit like Ginyamoto in Tokyo, because that was the main inspiration for it. But you know, it wasn't anything like what they were doing. Yeah, we offered 4-course and 7-course of the same menu, or a 5-course menu. That was it.
Was that surprising to you that it took off like that? Because I'm sure there was loads of people saying you were absolutely nuts. There's no way people are going to do that.
Well, you know, opening a bar with no sign that no one knew was there, you know, a name that no one could say in a part of the world where no one goes for cocktails was probably a bold move, but we hung our hats on the offering and basically said to ourselves, you know, we're going to do it no matter what. Plowed my life savings into that space with help of a mentor, and you know, we believed in it. And I remember we spoke to Joe Schuppler about like promoting the space. And we had this little interview with him, and then he wrote this article, and then we did this like CIA style redaction, like can't say that. And so the article kind of said, so there's this guy who used to work at the Edgbaston He's called Robert, and he makes nice drinks. And he's opened this place called Smolder and Stella that's only doing tasting menus, and you should definitely book. That was it. Not where it was, not what we were doing, anything at all. And he was like, this is going to land hard. He put the article out, and we got like 100 emails off this one email, which is the power of independent Birmingham. And we converted that into a lot of bookings. And then the day before we officially opened, Tom Cullen did like 3 photos and an article basically like touching on what we're doing, but like, again, pretty bare bones in terms of what we actually wanted him to say. Because I really like the element of surprise and revealing things to people at that moment. And we got another 250 emails. And so we converted that into about 400 bookings, like people. And so actually our Instagram account and our Twitter account just lay essentially dormant for like 2 months, because we were like, well, what's the point in telling people, oh, we have this incredible space and we're doing this really cool thing if you can't book, right? Like, it's like, look what you could have won. And so people came down, they didn't really know what to expect, which is, a lot like here. They walked into this space, we didn't tell anyone where it was. You got a text message on the morning of your booking. They give you like a riddle. It was like Head City Arcade. If you can hear the ding ding of a pinball machine or smell coffee beans, you're in the right place. Like follow your nose, I think it said. And then it said, walk up to the bar and tell the guys you're not there for beer or pinball. Because there was the 2 things they did in the evening when we were open. And so people would like walk up to the bar and they're like, I'm not here for beer or pinball. And at first people were like, what the hell are you doing here then? But then, people caught on because, people were going to this bar that was, maybe like, I think people thought it was a bit fancy, which it kind of wasn't and kind of was, I suppose. But they were coming for a tasting menu, which people know is kind of fancy. Mm-hmm. And so people stood up like a sore thumb, like they really stood out because, if you've been to Tilt, it's,
It's cool, it's just chill.
Yeah. Punk rocker t-shirts and slamming pizza beer. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. I literally love the place. It's a special place in my heart. But yeah, and so people would walk up to the bar and they would say, they were not there for beer or pinball. And the guys would then lead them down the stairs, past a row of pinballs and like unlock an unmarked door and say, have a nice evening. And they would walk down these 2 steps and then kind of like see me stood behind the bar being like, hey guys, how you doing? And people were just like, what the hell is going on? And we had this massive mural on the wall of a forest scape because we didn't want people to feel like, kind of claustrophobic. It was only a 4x4 meter room. And they sat on these big comfy chairs and, it was like being sat at a sushi counter. That's what a lot of people said, it's not my words, it's their words. We only left there. We only stopped Smolder and Stella because the building basically rejected us. We started to have, we had a water feature in the corner that we did not install. It's an old Victorian building, and eventually water found us. We were at the bottom. We were at the very bottom point of the building. So when the water started coming through, water will out. So eventually we had to leave that space. And 18-1 was the evolution of that space. We'd done this thing for 2 years, and it's like, it's, the grass is always greener. Working in a bar where it's what I now refer to as a la carte drinks. People walk in, they order a drink, whatever. I really wanted to do tasting menus. Then I'd done nothing but tasting menus for 2 years, and I really wanted to serve people like a la carte drinks and change the drinks all the time and like keep up to date with some stuff and like release some of these kind of creative ideas that I'd had in my head but had nowhere to put them outside of like, clients. So 18-1 kept the tasting menus in various forms throughout its 2-year run. But then we had this kind of idea of the menu is going to change like really frequently. And so we opened with a menu called Sugarcane, which was based on rum, and that existed for 4 months. And then we went on to another menu. So again, Atelier becomes the evolution of 18-1 really.
How did you even come across that venue?
Oh,
for anyone who doesn't know, it was in a friggin' car park, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was the old Meat Shack.
Meat Shack,
Yeah, so someone told us that Meat Shack had moved downstairs. I went and had a burger at Meat Shack. I'd been to Meat Shack a couple of times when they were in the upstairs space that was eventually 18-1. And we went in, and I was like, oh, what's happened to upstairs? And he said, oh, we moved downstairs. The bar down here closed, and so that space is available. And I think I'd met Paul a couple of times. We were looking for a space because we had this, waterfall in our bar that we weren't planning on having. And we weren't necessarily looking for commercial space because we didn't have a commercial space. We had a sublet, right? Like we had a room in an existing bar. And so we didn't really know what to do about it. But then when the offer presented itself, he said, come have a look at it. And so I'd been in the space before, but obviously spaces are very different when you see them with furniture and out furniture and stuff. And so we went into what was the old meat shack space, and I was like, wow, like it's such a massive space. It's not, but it seemed like it from coming from our 4x4 meter room. And we were like, okay, like how do we go about this? So we had a couple of conversations. It was all very, very informal. But Paul and Kat are they're street food, so you make do with what you've got, and we kind of had that same kind of ideology. So we packed everything down and we moved it over, and we made do with what we'd got. So we opened it with IKEA furniture and just did what we could. But in the 2 years we're open, we got the highest place on top 50 that Birmingham had ever gotten, and we put out a book, and we got some nice acclaim. It was kind of weird being in New York and people having heard of 1821 and being in Singapore and being in Dubai and people having heard of this bar, and we're like, wow, that's really weird.
It was fantastic. It deserved everything, because I think I went about 3 or 4 times.
That's very kind of you. Yeah,
it was.
We loved it. We closed because our intention was to emigrate to Singapore. Obviously Boris and COVID quashed that idea, but the semblance was Kindra and I loved that space so much. We loved 1821 probably more than Smoltron Star. I think Smoltron Star was more my space. It was just me there, and then she would come but she always said it was my space, but 1821 was ours, and that was really, really important. And Kindra is so awesome at what she does. She walks in, like the room lights up, and the way she like holds a room and looks after people, the way she remembers people and their orders and what they wore, and their dog's name and their pet's name, and she's incredible, and I really don't know anyone else I've ever worked with who does what she does in the way she does it. Yeah, and so like working with her has always been that kind of like that big shining light. And so that was what we did. It was nice drinks in a nice place for nice people. We drummed on about Fast, Friendly, Delicious. We did a lot of pre-batch there. We did shake some drinks, but we did a lot of pre-batch. We had the quote above the bar, "We live in the future you're about to occupy," which we turned into a poster in lockdown when we said.
Was that a quote you came up with? Or?
No, it's actually weirdly the quote Kindra found from the head of content for Netflix, which makes sense. Yeah. But actually, it should be the strap line for hospitality. Every chef, we spend 7 or 8 hours a day here before anyone ever arrives. So the idea is we literally live in the future you're about to occupy. We're building, here we call them exhibitions, but 1821, we change the menu every 3 or 4 months. Here we change our exhibitions, on a whim. This one's going to be 8 weeks when it finishes. Winter Solstice will only be 5 weeks. The one after that will only be 2 days of an exhibition. The one after that we think is going to be 10 weeks. Yeah, so we're always working in the future, like bars and restaurants, like so many other industries. It's not just limited to us, but, obviously Netflix, they are constantly working on the future. Most restaurants get requests for Christmas bookings in August from corporates. Yeah. So you are literally working in the future, and you're planning menus and working out costings and always trying to work out what's next, whether it's Wimbledon or Oscar season or WrestleMania, or it doesn't matter what kind of venue, whether you're working at a dive bar or you like Meat Shack, they would literally live and die by the O2. The Academy, is it like just over the Bristol road? They knew for a fact that if there was like a big gig on, that they would be rammed. And so that became our thing, but more because we're always working on the next menu, because when we're serving this menu, it's a finished article, and we just are serving it to you then, just like a restaurant. They have a menu and they're serving it. They're developing the next menu, not this one.
But it's a double thing, because obviously when you know the history of Netflix, so it obviously appeared when everyone was using Blockbuster.
Yes. Everyone
would have laughed. And for them to turn around and say, "Oh well, we're not worried that you're laughing at us now, because in the future will be the one." And in the same sense, when you're talking about doing drinks tasting menus and stuff like that, everyone's probably sneering and turning their nose up and saying that will never work. But here we are now. This is stunning, isn't it? Like what we're in now, and it's a good quote for you.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely. Yeah, and we stand by it, and we'll continue to like have that as an internal thing for I think for a long time to come. I don't think it's quite tattoo worthy, but yeah, it's certainly something we hang our hat on. But yeah, it's always there in the background, working its way. What's next.
Hour and 20 in, finally getting around to where we're recording this podcast today.
Yeah, the actual bar.
And the reason that we're doing this.
Before we go to that, I've got to ask, because there's a theme occurring. Your first place was hard to find. 1881 was very hard to find. And even this place, to a certain extent, isn't the easiest place to see.
Well, you know what? I love that kind of that mirror, because Small Style was impossible to find. 1881 was hard to find. We gave you some clues. What I love about Atelier is that it is, if you strain your eyes, you can see the main road. It's right there.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that we're just off the beaten track enough, but, we are slap bang in the middle of the JQ. That the canal is right there. There is a massive square. There is an apartment block with hundreds of people living in it. There's a co-op. There's a pub, and the main road is right there. We are in the middle of it, and yet still kind of like hidden away.
Yeah. Is that,
and, we don't have like
you look for?
I found the parallels in the 2 years we've been trying to get this place open, but it wasn't something that we looked at the time. When the wilderness was hard to find when it was on Dudley Street, and it's still a little bit hard to find now. People still call us and they're like, I'm stood outside of a jeweler's. And we're like, well, you gotta be a bit more specific. But yeah, they're stood right outside, but they're not expecting to walk down like a bit of a dingy alleyway to get to one of the best restaurants in the country. I can say that now, right? After last week. But personally, I never wanted to be in a place where people walked past and went, hey, look, a bar, because then you get everybody. And I don't mean that in the way maybe it sounds, but, we are very specific in what we offer. And so we want specific people. Quite frankly, if you want a pint, there's a pub on the corner. If you want to play pool and be loud and do shots of Jaeger, awesome. Like there is absolutely a time and a place for that. It's just not here. And we designed this place during COVID to give people loads of space because it was mandated. But then when we came to those things dropping away, we were like, no, let's keep those elements in place. Not for social distancing, but so people have got enough space to feel luxurious and. You don't go to a 5-star hotel and get crammed into a space. And we don't have those in Birmingham. So we were like, well, let's make a luxury space. Let's have it so you've got more than enough space, not an adequate amount. And let's make it feel luxury, even if, what we're doing is just serving cocktails. You can come here in shorts and t-shirt and a baseball cap. You can come here in sandals and a wife beater. You might feel out of place because someone sat next to you might be wearing, a 3-piece suit and a ball gown. We have beer, we have wine, we're a bar. We just happen to do something specific alongside of it.
Rob won't judge you, but I will. It's far too nice for that, man.
But we never wanted to open a special occasion place. Like fine dining restaurants, they become a special occasion because they're expensive by nature. Mm-hmm. If you're being served 8 or 12 courses, you can't do that for like 30 quid, right? No. So it becomes expensive. We want to use the best liquor we can. So our drinks are, they're not the most expensive in the city. Like you go to Marco Pierre White's or Orel and they're charging, £15 for a cocktail, whatnot. We're not charging that. When it comes down to it, we just want to do what's right for us. And so our pricing, our offering, our service, it comes down to what we want, not fighting against the market. If you want to come here for a glass of wine after work, cool. Like, we're here for that too. But, if you want to come and have a 7-course, multi-course cocktail menu, you can do that as well. And, we're one of the few places in the world where it's offered. So that's pretty cool as well. You can get a glass of wine pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. How did this come about? Because obviously you said COVID put a stop to Singapore. So how did you go from we're off to Singapore and now we're doing this?
Yeah, well, I've been friends with Al for a long time. I met Al through Twitter. He tweeted saying, has anyone worked with ants? And I had. And so I messaged him back.
Of course he did.
So very Alex Clarridge, isn't it? Yeah. And so I went and had a chat with him and Brian when it was Nomad. We it was supposed to be like a 20-minute coffee and it ended up being like 2.5 hours. And then I became like their drinks guy. And so we did the drinks program at Nomad that went into the wilderness. And then I went off, obviously, to own my own places. And then there was a little period where I wasn't doing any work with them. And I kind of came back into the fold very briefly while they had nocturnal animals to do a tasting menu, actually, for Enigma. And then when we were in the UK, it's COVID, everybody's locked down. Al reached out, I think, or we commented on each of the social posts or something. And yeah, we ended up like going for a state sanctioned walk, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not really sure. We were doing take-home cocktails, under the 1881 brand, which was, super positive because they were like going crazy. And he said, have you thought about coming back into the family, as he calls it, And, the team at the Wilderness we have now, everyone's been with us now for, I think, maybe like 2 years is like the shortest service term of any member of staff, I think, which is amazing and testament to, like we never, well, I say we, Alex, the guys that own the place, they didn't lay off anyone during COVID. There was no, there was no downsizing. There was none of that. Like, if anything, we've built the team over COVID. We took on more people. So that was really positive. I came back in first kind of with reservations because I didn't really know. I'd never worked in a fine dining restaurant. I'd obviously played with them in the past, but never been there as a full-time role. But then we built the new bar, and I love fine dining anyway, so it was kind of like, so that kind of gelled in pretty quickly. And the customers just adored what we were doing and what we are doing. I hope that doesn't sound braggy, but yeah, like the flights that we do alongside Sonal, doing a hacked wine program that Alex and I had visions of like 6 years ago, and then finally put into process a couple of years ago now, and is apparently making waves. It's just been like a really weird kind of journey, but here we are with the 2 years it's taken to open this place. We built the Wilderness to be everything we wanted it to be, with like a young dynamic team. Like there's very rarely ever a no. It's always like, we have an idea, let's go out and do it. That was always the thing. It's always like, just push. And that's because Alex gets bored a lot. Like he does something, he's like, bored of that, next thing. But that's why it is the restaurant it is. Like, it's why it's, 7 years old and has had like 3 or 4 like pretty major rebrandings.
And there's no dish. There's no dish on that menu that's been there the entire time. These restaurants, they all seem to have that one dish.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex's are always different, which is very commendable.
The Big Mac is probably the thing that's been around the longest,
and that's very different to how it was.
Absolutely. I mean,
the last time I had it to the first time I had it, they're completely different.
Absolutely, yeah.
How is it working with Sonal? Like, massive talent like Sonal, and then he comes on board. It's unusual to get two such talented like drinks people. Like, remember when did Sonal come just after you? Or
no,
just
he was before me. He came on board before me. Like, I think he joined in the January. Then we went into lockdown in like, what was it, March, and then I joined in the August, and we opened in the September.
Because I remember you joining, and we were like,
oh, what the fuck?
Are they both there? Is Sonal still there?
Yeah.
And we were like checking. And it was
Well,
like,
so
they're
often
both
you don't see like a drinks guy and a wine guy, but because Sonal isn't your traditional wine guy, he doesn't have the same, I think, like hang-ups as a lot of the like traditional somms, and that there are places now that have drinks people and wine people, but because those worlds are so expansive, they very rarely trim over. Like, I love almost everything we do has some kind of wine built into it, through vermouth and cherries and aromatized and everything else, fortifieds. I think wine adds a lot of depth and complexity and elegance to cocktails, and I think it's really, really important. And working alongside Sonal, I learned a lot, and I think it kind of opened his eyes to also what was possible. And manifesting hacked wines, for example, alongside him, that was trippy because I just assumed that he would rebel against it. Like, you're doing what to wine? Like... And
a lot of people would. Get
for sure. Yeah. And, what I also love is that, he's so deeply set in the wine world. A lot of people know who he is. He's a very well-known man for his skill set. An incredible sommelier. And the fact that he wears those drinks so proudly, You know, like he doesn't like talk about them in the restaurant and then like goes out, you know, down to London or goes off to Champagne or, you know, goes out to a vineyard somewhere in the world and like hides them. You know, he like talks about them actively. And they are, you know, they are really unique, and we're pretty sure one of a kind. We don't know if anyone else, like if anyone else listening knows that someone else is doing what we're doing, I would love to hear from them, like genuinely DM me. They're so much fun because they are rebellious and punk and yet respectful to the original, which is kind of the wilderness, I guess. And kind of Sonal as well, because he is that guy. Like, he's not got the classical training and he doesn't speak about wine the way I hear a lot of Soms do. He doesn't think the way a lot of Soms do either. And when I bring him an idea or he brings me an idea, it's always so much fun to play out. Like, we have one of our wines we call Chardonnay 2.0. And he brought me this idea of like wanting to democratize fine wine. Now, as a sommelier, who says shit like that? I want to democratize fine wine. There are these wines that exist that are like thousands of pounds a bottle. And he was like, I don't think those wines should exist for only an elite few. So how do we get those wines in a glass for everybody at a price point that anybody and everybody can afford? And of course, you can't do it perfectly. You can't replicate something perfectly, because then why does the original exist? You know, like, when does the fake become the real kind of thing? But, you know, we explain to people what it is, they order it, and they love it, which is what it exists for.
Yeah.
And so things like that, you know, like we have one of the drinks on the flight. You can't order it, it only comes on the flight, called Old World, New World. We put a glass of wine down in front of you. We explain to you it's an Old World glass of wine. We've treated the wine. We've not added anything to it other than like a treatment. And you smell it, you taste it. I think you guys have had it, right?
I've had it, yeah.
It's an Old World wine. It's a classic Côte d'Rône. And then you swirl it in the glass like you would a glass of red wine, and you smell it and taste it again, and it's completely changed. And it's a New World wine. It's lighter, it's fruitier, it's softer. And that really messes people up, because we're not even at the table.
It's alchemy. It's not a drink. That's just... It's insane.
Yeah,
but wonderful.
But it's
as well.
fun at the same time, right? Like, it has to be fun. Like, it can't not deliver, and it can't not be delicious. Those are the two like most important things.
Well, I think with wine especially, that gets missed a lot. The fun side of drinking.
Yeah.
It's not really there with wine too much.
And you know what? That's really kind of one of the things that we're focusing on with this next exhibition. You know, because you know the current terroir exhibition at Atelier is a little bit more cerebral. You know, we're focusing on flavors that are unjustly esoteric. You know, like we're working with the British Pantry. So you go to bars and you see strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, and you see mangoes and passion fruits and pineapples, and they're not from here. And yet bars don't work with nectarines and nettle and gooseberry and gorse flower and, you know, damson, and even things like blackcurrant. And that's a massive shame, because we have this incredible pantry of ingredients. You know, on this menu there are 55 flavors, and all of them are British in some way, shape, or form. You know, it's not a political movement. It's a fork in the sand. You know, it's like a line in the sand to say, you know, you don't have to go outside of our country to find tropical flavors, to find rich flavors, fruity flavors, berry flavors that are not the kind of things that you see on every other menus.
I mean, I think, did I hear you say when we came here that you have one that's basically pina colada inspired?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like, that's just insane without using coconut or pineapple.
Yeah. You can get those flavors without those things, but you have to go outside of your ordinary life, because it's easy to grab coconut rum and add pineapple juice, right? Like,
so what do you do? Do you start with, all right, I want a pina colada, and then you have to try and find something that, I don't even understand how that process works.
This particular menu started out as like a cause to celebrate the British Pantry, and then became more than that. It became, well, what, you know, we kind of got to a certain point and we said, well, where can we go with this? If we can do, for example, a pina colada, a Negroni, and an old fashioned, you know, those are three drinks that are classics that pretty much everybody in the world knows. But they require things outside of this country. So you need bourbon, sugar from the Caribbean, pineapples, coconuts, you know, Italian vermouth, Amaro from outside this country. But could we do something that kind of represents those things, but in a way that is slightly different? And again, you know, we're not the only people to be doing this. There are lots of other people doing it, but it's not enough for it to be a change in the status quo. And that's really what we're doing. You know, everything about what I've been doing for the last 10 years has been about changing the status quo of cocktails from within. I'm not on the outside. I'm not on the periphery kind of going, I wish it was different. You know, I'm nuts deep in it. You know, I'm like investing my own money in opening a bar that only serves a tasting menu when only one other bar in the entire world does it. You know, when we moved to 1881, we decided we were going to do things a little bit differently, and we were going to pre-mix everything when pre-mixing was still, you know, like frowned upon. Like, you're pre-mixing stuff? Like, are you mad? Like, I'm not paying this much money for a pre-mixed drink. I want to see someone pouring it and shaking it and stirring it, all that kind of stuff. So we are inside of it, like trying to make a change from within. But yeah, with Terroir, it was about coming across flavors that we thought were interesting and seeing what we could do with them. And when we realized that we could do a pina colada, a Negroni, an old fashioned, and, you know, built within a menu of also, you know, fruity, tropical, berry flavors without using all those things that people associate with those flavors. You know, no raspberries, no strawberries, no blackberries, no passion fruits, no pineapples, you know, no mangoes, but still having tropical and berries and all those things from things that people don't expect or don't think about. That's really important. And to present what is, you know, 55 flavors through 22 drinks, each one unique and interesting and different and delicious, hopefully, then we kind of go, okay, we did that. You know, and that's really what Atelier is about. It's about looking at someone with like a laser focus, like hyper focus, just for a short period of time. But because of the unjustly esoteric nature of gooseberries and nettles and, you know, pineapple weed, it became semi-cerebral. Like, we're trying to explain to people these flavors that they're not really entirely understanding and that can come from just down the road. You know, explain to people that there's fig leaves available in Brindley Place is just, you know, mind-blowing to them, and that they can deliver a kind of like vanilla-y, coconutty flavor with the right process. Like, really trips people out. But also, you know, we're coming towards the end of that now, and so with winter solstice, the focus is this kind of, you know, celebration of winter and winter cultures, and so we're going to hyper focus on that for 5 weeks and show people like a fun side, because, you know, as we said, drinking is about fun. It's about getting drunk. You know, you can do it elegantly and, you know, like adultly and sensibly, but you're still getting drunk. The still goal is being a bit fuzzy. You know, like, we don't want you to be like paralyzed falling in the canal outside, but we want you to be, you know, a little bit fuzzy and have a nice time and socialize with your friends, because, you know, you go out with a person, you want to spend time with that person, you know, not queuing at the bar. When we opened Smultron and Stella, we'd spend 2 hours with people, and he tells the same thing over and over and over again. Drinks are too expensive, they take too long, and they're too sweet. And so 1881 became the narrative of, let's change that. You know, so having savoury drinks and strong drinks and boozy drinks. And I think we were one of the first bars to do like an ice stamp, which people just lost their minds over. And, you know, it became that kind of thing of, we were the bar that you went to for like serious drinks, but to have a good time. And then we were closed. That was sad, but, you know, we always knew there would be something else, you know, for them or for us. It just happens to be that, you know, we're back.
This is the place.
We hope so. We're one of the places, you know, like, it's not a competition. There's plenty of room for everybody.
Well, I meant more in the sense of your place.
Yes, I guess, my name's on the door, so it has to be my place, right?
So the winter menu, is that going to be UK-based ingredients as well, or
no? So we're buying ingredients from all over the world, representing flavors from all over the world. So, you know, the aspect of terroir and focusing on the British pantry.
That was just for that exhibition.
Exactly. And we'll always represent flavors from the UK over flavors from elsewhere. Unless the thing we need is from elsewhere. Right. Like, if we're focusing on tamarind and guava and teocates from Mexico, we can't buy those things here. So we have to get them from there. You can't buy piloncillo from Birmingham. You can't forage it. So we buy it from there. Like I say, it's not a political movement. It's not like we only buy British now. It's about,
it was
like, it's about like, it's been a soapbox. You know, that this can happen, and we'll go back to it, and we'll always have those little touches. You know, we want people to come here and have drinks, find them delicious, but find them interesting as well, right? Like, we want to engage your brain as well as your mouth. As weird as that sounds.
You can just do walk-ins. You don't need to book.
Absolutely, yeah. We're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Currently, when we reopen on the 17th for our new exhibition, we'll be open on Wednesday. So we open at 5, so you can come after work on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from the 17th. And on Saturday, we open at 3, so you can do a little bit of afternoon drinking. Come after lunch, you know. Yeah, and so this next exhibition will run through to Christmas. And if you want to have an awesome New Year's Eve, ask me what we're doing for New Year's Eve when you get here.
Yes. That sounds like a plan.
Yes. I'm so excited for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
The thing we're doing is nothing to do with New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, so we'll be asking.
Nothing to do with New Year's Eve. I'm literally so excited to do this event. I've been trying to do it for 15 years. I'm a massive Bond nerd, so we're playing with the idea that it's 60 years of Bond this year. So any Bond nerds or want to do something cool for New Year's,
sure
come and have drinks and let us know.
Awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up, Rob, or did we get through everything that was on your prep
Absolutely,
list?
yeah.
Tick list is done.
Yeah.
Man, this has been absolutely incredible. Like, I knew it was going to be phenomenal. I've been looking forward to it for ages, and
It's been good, man.
yeah.
Can I do just a couple of these questions? There's a couple I really want to know the answer to, especially with yourself. I'll be super quick with them. What's your favourite TV show?
The American Office.
Yes. I think we've spoken about that before,
Yes.
actually. Oh, you put that thing on about the head the other day, didn't you? The back of the head. I'm not joking. I was drinking a cup of tea at the time and that came. I'd spat it all over the living room.
Yes. I was actually sat on the train and I was like, I'm putting this up immediately.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's like only Office fans would get so many of those things right. But there's literally there's a parable for every situation in life.
Yeah,
American
from
Office.
that show, yeah. What's your favourite movie?
Oh my word. I don't know if I'd be able to answer that.
No, it's too many.
Yeah, movies is one of those things that I'm obsessed with. Like I have like 370 movies on my like iCloud account.
Wow.
And like at one point I had like 500 DVDs. Big movie head, but yeah, I don't know if I would be able to pick like one favorite. I really love action movies. Like I really love comic book movies, but I also love like old school stuff. I love like foreign language films and there's literally everything in between.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be... No, I wouldn't be able to
No,
pick
that's fine. That's a good answer either way. What's your favourite big fast food chain?
Does it have to be English?
Not necessarily, no.
I would say In-N-Out Burger in a flash.
A lot of people have said that about their
It's
foreign sort of choice.
yeah, unbelievably good. It's not... Yes, it's a fast food joint with not fast food food. But UK, I think McDo still wins out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do love KFC. Like, I love KFC.
Yeah, I'm big for KFC.
McDo kind of like, yeah, still always there for me. Still the
right.
shining golden arches, right?
So to be honest, it's the most common answer by a long way.
Yeah.
And Liam likes to find out what do you order.
Right now, double quarter pounder with cheese. And I really love the like nacho things. They're like cheese triangles with like jalapenos in them and stuff.
No, right, I haven't tried that.
They're like a thing that they bring in and bring out kind of thing. But at the moment, double quarter pounder cheese because the Big Mac has become smaller and smaller and smaller. So now
Yeah,
when
it's
I eat
not
a Big Mac
anymore, is it?
It's like there's no meat taste. It's like eating a salad sandwich.
Yeah, it's definitely changed.
So I've migrated to the double quarter pounder with cheese because
You actually get a burger out of it.
you actually get two actual burgers in it. Yeah.
And what's your favourite food or drink destination in the world?
Singapore.
Yeah, that's come up a lot as well as an answer. Loads of people.
Singapore and New Orleans, I would hands down with maybe Las Vegas, the 3 best cities that I've ever been to. I've been multiple times to all 3 and all of them because they have an incredible F&B scene. That was an easy one.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's mine.
Happy?
Yeah, awesome.
Thank
Brilliant.
you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Brilliant.
I'm off to get a Mac now.